Okay, let me switch to that. Now, half the questions, well, a little bit less than half the questions on the test will be presented in the data sufficiency format. And data sufficiency is not a subject unto itself. It's just another question format. So in that sense, it's no different from multiple choice or true or false. It's just a way of framing the question. And a lot of students are really kind of intimidated by it. But again, I've got good news for you. If you look at it a certain way, from a different perspective, it's easier for you, because nowhere in a data sufficiency problem does it actually, if you understand it and read it through, does it actually ask you to or require you to solve the problem. All that you're asked for, okay, if you haven't seen it before, you want to be very familiar with this. You'll be given a question. And it may say solve for this or solve for that, but you're not actually going to do that work. It'll give you two individual statements, each of which is true. And this is data sufficiency for a reason. Are the data sufficient to answer the question? So we don't need to solve the thing out. We need to say, if we could, if we felt like putting in the effort, which we don't, we could solve the problem. So think of A as reading statement of 1 alone would be enough to answer the question, but statement 2 not. Or question B, answer choice B. Statement 2 alone would be enough, but not A. C, both statements together would be sufficient, but neither alone would be sufficient. And then there's the understood, kind of in a Bart Simpson voice. If I wanted to solve it, but I don't want to. It's good to know that you're not asked to solve things out. You're just asked to tell them, would you be able to, given the information that they give you? And that's, again, a much, much easier task. These 5 answer choices will always be the same for every data sufficiency question. So you definitely want to learn these. If you have internalized or memorized these 5 choices well enough, then you won't need to read through them every time on the test, which I had one student test for me, saved her just about 2 minutes on the math section by not reading the answer choices for data sufficiency over and over. But if you're in any doubt at all as to which letter was which, obviously read these answers. I mean, no 2 or 3 seconds is worth taking that risk. There's working fast and then there's working sloppy. But if you just memorize all 5 of these, then you can save yourself a couple of minutes on the math section, and that is a lot. And one way of looking at it, if you want to, is 1 to 10 for the 5 choices. Statement A, 1 alone sufficient. Statement 2, B, 2 alone sufficient. C, together. E for each or either one, and for neither. But that's a mnemonic device to help you remember those. Let's see. One more point, and then... Oh, and I mean, it helps. There are certain things that I'll repeat over and over to the point of kind of annoying you, but it's for effect, and it helps to just that extra word sometimes helps to clarify things. When you look at these statements, like A, okay, statement 1 alone would be sufficient all by itself, but B alone would not be sufficient all by itself. B, statement 2 alone is sufficient all on its own, but statement 1 alone is not sufficient. Throughout this test, if you kind of amplify what's being said, because they'll word things in a very dense fashion, if you unpack them, it makes the answer choices that much clearer. And let me show the strategy that I believe you should follow for data sufficiency questions, and it will overcome the worst trick that they try to use on you the most frequently. Okay, so we're asked, is the value of n closer to 50 than to 75? Okay, and what you want to do as soon as this comes up on the screen is cover up one of the two statements. You can use a piece of paper, you can hold up a pen, you can hold up a finger. You want to cover up one of the statements so you consider one statement completely in isolation, all by itself, because you'll be asked here, is each statement sufficient all by itself? So we're going to examine n is greater than 60. Okay, we've got 50 to 75. You'd be really surprised just how really useful a number line is in visualizing otherwise difficult to sort of get our brain wrapped around questions. A number line just really helps us visualize, and they use the language of space, of distance. Physically, they're putting these numbers on a number line. Okay, you've got 50 and you've got 75. And this is the good student in me, and I'd recommend it for all of you. Just when you draw a number line, instantly I want to draw the midpoint. Okay, so we have statement 2 that says that n is greater than 60. So 60 is about here. And their question was, is n closer to 50 than it is to 75? That answer would be yes or no. And again, you're being asked, do you have sufficient data to answer this question? So with statement 2 alone, all by itself, let's have everybody put up a green check for yes and a red X for no. How many of you say yes, that's sufficient information to answer the question, and how many of you say no? Okay, that's near unanimity. That is unanimity. Can I have a volunteer to discuss why not? Okay, David, good morning.
Good morning. I mean, it's not sufficient. It could be, but it could also be, n could be 74, which is clearly closer to 75.
You're on the right track, but the numbers you were using are a little off. Okay, we know that it's greater than 60, and we're being asked, is it closer to 50 than it is to 75? Okay, we know that it's somewhere in this region, from 60 to 75. And we know that 62.5 is the midpoint. So why is this answer maybe or sometimes?
Because n could be a number between 60 and 62.5, but
Right.
it can also be it could be a number between 62.5 and 75. So,
right. So this, I mean, most of the time this would be true. It would be above 62.5, and then the answer would be yes. But it could fit in this donut hole here, and in that case it would not be, well, in that case it would be closer to 50 than it would to 75. And so it wouldn't be consistent. And for an answer choice to be correct, thank you, Dave, in data sufficiency, it has to be true in every case, no matter what value you plug in. It has to give you one discrete answer only. So even if you get a question that, deals with the square root of 9, let's say, and that would give you plus or minus 3, unfortunately that's not sufficient, because that still gives us two values, plus 3 or minus 3, and even that's not good enough. We have to be very nitpicky. One and only one answer that's true for all cases. So if the answer choice is it could be, or it is almost all the time, we have to always err on the side of caution, I guess, and say no, then we can't use it, which is great. I mean, using that in our favor. Okay, just like it can seem sometimes like they'll be doinking us for points because we didn't catch some little detail or something. Okay, you can do the same thing with them. In the answer choices, if you find one teeny little mistake, then you can rule a question out. I mean, an answer choice out. So we've exhausted the possibilities of 2. There's nothing more we can do with 2. So that's just inconclusive. So now what we want to do is cover up that question. That's like doing jury duty, trying to unring the bell. Try to forget you ever saw statement 2 and look at statement 1 and ask yourself this, by the same token, question 1, would that be sufficient all by itself to answer the question? It's not asking you to solve it out. It's, would you be able to tell me the right answer based on 1 alone? This would be sufficient to tell us if n is closer to 50 or 75. Okay, David?
I'll give it a shot. Basically, I just kind of solved on both sides of the equation. I added 50 to 75, which gave me 125, and then I added the negative n over to the other side. So I had 125 is greater than 2n. If you divide both sides by 2, you get 62.5 is greater than, and from there you see if you have enough data.
And so you would be able to answer the question. In this case, what would be the answer to the question if you did answer it?
I mean, anything between 50 and 62.5 could be in.
Right. So, I mean, the answer to this question is yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
it's terrible. It seems so, you know, first grade, but it's an integral part of this test. So many students miss so many questions because they don't read the answer choices, the instructions very carefully. Okay, keep in mind, these guys are out to trick you. They don't want you to get the question right. They want you to think you did and then not get the score you want and then have to pay to retake it again from them. And who knows, maybe buy another copy of the official guide from them. And so don't assume anything on this test. And don't assume anything as you're reading the instructions. You want to read them carefully, word for word.